So nice to have you here with us today, Brett.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and there's so much going on at Alaska right now, fresh off the heels of this merger with Hawaiian. And just putting that in context with one of our megatrends is we're forecasting this sort of continuation in premium products and really this big expansion into premium across all sorts of airlines, Alaska included. During Alaska's Investor Day, you guys released this strategy called Alaska Accelerate. And I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit more about this plan and the role that premium and loyalty are going to play into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for having me. It's great to have a few minutes to speak with you and to share a bit of the vision that we're embarking upon at Alaska. I think what's interesting about Alaska Accelerate specifically is we packaged it up for Investor Day, and the enthusiasm was great, but it's actually something we've been working on for the past decade. Premium is not a new strategy for Alaska Air Group. 10 years ago, we rolled out premium class. We've had first class for many, many decades. And this is really our opportunity with long-haul travel to lean into it in a new and different way. Certainly, having wide-body aircraft flying to destinations across Asia and Europe is a big piece of that. Our new premium card is a big piece of that. The investment that we've made in lounges, existing investment and new investment that's forthcoming, all builds on what we've done for quite a long time. And the timing is right. The market has clearly moved to a position where premium and the ability to offer a better experience is popular. It's resonating with consumers. We think it's durable. And Alaska Accelerate really builds on a lot of what we've seen and the history and the heritage that we've had at Alaska.
I want to touch on the lounge bit, kind of as Carolyn mentioned before in her presentation. We've been seeing kind of a bit of like an arms race when it comes to lounges with airlines and credit cards over the past couple of years, kind of competing with each other to offer some of the fanciest amenities at airports across the country. I'm wondering how does Alaska plan to stand out with its lounges?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just listened to the Capital One presentation. I've been to Jen's Lounge at DCA, the landing. It's fantastic. So kudos to Capital One. But there are so many options now for guests, whether it's an airline branded product like we have at Alaska, whether it's a credit card branded product, whether it's a third-party product. I think our philosophy is really to make it a place of respite. Like, we want it to be high-end, we want to have differentiated offerings, but we also don't want there to be a queue of 100 people out the door. So we've been really deliberate in how we think about that product, where we offer it, how we merchandise it, how we think about monetizing it, because our best guests are there. And if our best guests are spending 10 minutes waiting to get in or having to join a queue, that's not the experience we want. And so part of our strategy is to continue to keep it as a space that's elevated, that's easy to get into, that's reserved for our most privileged travelers. But part of that also is finding ways to up the game in an environment where there's a certain demographic and what they want is more authentic experiences. So I'll give you an example. When we opened our flagship lounge in Seattle about 6 years ago, we have more beers on tap than any other lounge in the world. I think there's a dozen beers on tap. And I remember having the discussion because we had to have an entire room just for the kegs. It's a big investment. Airport real estate is not cheap, but ultimately that's what consumers are telling us they want. And so we're trying to lean into that. And luxury means many different things to different people. And in a market like Seattle, having a bunch of microbrews, that's luxury. And so we're trying to tune our product to those kinds of needs.
Yeah, and kind of just going off of that, one of the issues that we've seen with lounges in general since the pandemic has been overcrowding. I'm wondering with these new lounges that Alaska is rolling out in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, what are the plans to kind of combat that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think certainly from our perspective, we've been on kind of the lounge journey in particular for a number of years. We've invested in a new lounge in Seattle and San Francisco. Portland will open in the next couple of years. And so we have the requisite space we need right now. We've also, to my earlier point, been really deliberate about how we grant access and thoughtful about managing the demand that's out there because there is significant demand. We're looking to the future in terms of building out bigger lounges to support long-haul travel. A lot of that construction is already underway, but I do think it's ultimately a balance of supply and demand, and there's only so much real estate at airports, and it takes not decades, it takes years to build out a good lounge facility. It can't take decades. So we're just going to continue to invest in the space and make sure that we're metering entrance in a way that retains the quality of the experience.
And another competitive bit for airlines has also been credit cards. It's one of the biggest cash cows. And I know at Investor Day, Alaska also announced that it's going to release a new premium credit card to cater more towards high-spend travelers. That space, kind of like lounges, is also very saturated. So what is Alaska going to do to differentiate itself there, and how is it going to boost signups for this credit card?
Yeah, we were really resistant at Air Group for quite a while in rolling out a premium card. We've looked at it over the last decade at least 3 times that I'm aware of. Ultimately, why we're launching it now is the market has shifted. Yes, it's extremely competitive. There's a lot of premium cards in the market, but when we went out and spoke to consumers, spoke to cardholders and asked them what they wanted, they did want a product that was upmarket, that had more to offer. We have about over 3 million cardholders today. It's a really big portfolio, over $2 billion of revenue. It's hugely important to Air Group and our profitability. And if guests are telling us they want a premium product, like that's a need that we need to fill. What we've seen, interestingly, is we did a pre-registration as part of Investor Day for the month of December, ran for about 20 days. We had over 100,000 people express interest, and the fantastic thing about that is now we have a lot of data that allows us to understand, well, who's interested in the product. More than half of the folks that expressed interest don't have the card today. Those that do have the card, most are not giving us the share of wallet that we would anticipate. So there's big upside for us in terms of accessing new cohorts. They tend to be younger travelers in markets perhaps where we're not as strong, and existing cardholders that maybe aren't giving us a share of wallet that they could with the right inducement. And so we absolutely think there's a market opportunity for premium. We're gonna do it in a way that's different though, because it is saturated. Offering just another lounge product and then having the queues like our competitors have, like that's not our strategy. We think there's a lot you can package into a premium card that's interesting and ultimately makes our product more competitive vis-a-vis the bank issued cards, which offer a great proposition for consumers. And that's really who we're competing with now as much as it is American, United, Delta.
Yeah, and I think 100,000 signups is impressive too, and it's interesting to see just across the board how younger travelers are beginning to become more interested in the space too. I also want to touch on Seattle. I know that Alaska is now going to launch its first 2 international routes to Seoul and Tokyo later this year. And another big competitor in Seattle is Delta, and for a long time, Delta was able to operate these long-haul routes that Alaska wasn't. How do you expect to compete with Delta when it comes to these products and these routes?
Yeah, look, Seattle's our home market. Our headquarters has been there for decades. We're by far the largest carrier. 55% of the seats that leave Seattle every day are on Alaska. This is the economic engine that drives Air Group. It's where we've been successful. Ultimately, our perspective is, when we see this with travel on our partners, is people in Seattle, they want to fly on Alaska Airlines. They want us to take them to places that they need to go either for business or for leisure. And we weren't offering that need to them. We weren't able to deliver on that. And so us flying long haul out of Seattle, and we're starting with Tokyo and Seoul, but there'll be more beyond that, is a natural evolution of our network. You go back in time 2 decades, we didn't fly to the East Coast. As soon as we opened up the East Coast, consumers that were Alaska loyalists flying on competitors, they started flying on Alaska. Long haul will be no different. And the great thing now is when we have the infrastructure, the capability, the platform with the Hawaiian combination, and 2, we're in one world, we have a lot of data on what our guests are doing with our partners. So we feel really good about our long haul expansion, and ultimately Seattle's our home market, and we're very well positioned to win.
So one of the things you mentioned with Alaska, they have this regional loyalty in the Pacific Northwest and West Coast in general. Now with this premium push, is the type of customer you're looking to attract going to change?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We look at, obviously, the mix of our consumers, who's on board our planes, the demographics. In a market like Seattle, we're relevant to most travelers. We'll be even more relevant now with long-haul flying, but it's more interesting in a place like San Diego, where we offer the most nonstops, but we're not the biggest carrier. And so we've been really deliberate, thoughtful about how we're segmenting markets and who we're going after, because we do want to be positioned to win. And ultimately, if we're the number 3 or 4 player, if you're subscale, it's a really hard industry to be successful and to drive the kind of margins that we need to in order to deliver on the Alaska Accelerate vision. And so I think what you'll find is us continuing to focus on our points of strength: Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Honolulu, Anchorage, and there's plenty of growth there to go around.
And I also want to touch on Mileage Plan. I feel like Mileage Plan is known for being a very customer-friendly loyalty program. It's known for being one of the few mileage-based programs where you earn miles based on the amount you fly. But in the context of this premium push, is Alaska potentially considering a more revenue-based model for its loyalty program?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, one that guests ask us about all the time. Similar to a premium card, we've spent the past decade, past 15 years asking consumers what do they want. And early on, 10, 15 years ago, when this became a thing in the US market, guests were very, very focused on distance-based accrual. They knew it, they liked it, they wanted Alaska to keep it. I'll tell you that that perception, we go out and talk to consumers, it's changing. We did research last year. A majority of guests want to earn based on revenue. It's what they're used to, whether it's Sephora or an airline or a hotel, they're compensated on the amount they spend. And I'm not saying Alaska is going to go that direction, but we do want to listen to our consumers and what they want. We're going to do it in our own way. And I think there's a lot of different approaches that we could take. But ultimately, what we're hearing from guests is that they understand revenue, it's easy, they get it. And by and large, it's now a preference for our cohort of travelers.
Yeah, we're getting a few audience questions in, so I want to touch on some of those. One of them is, what are some of the specific benefits you're considering adding to a premium credit card and why?
Yeah, no, thanks for the audience for the question. We've had a lot of fun over the past couple of years with our partners at Bank of America and Visa, talking to guests, understanding what type of product features they want in a premium card. As I alluded to earlier, this is more about competing with bank-issued cards, whether it's Chase or American Express or Citi. And so what you'll see, to speak to the question of the features on the card, it's going to look a lot more like products like that. Think about currency flexibility. So you might have a ton of mileage plan miles. You can travel, obviously, on air, but perhaps you want to use them for hotels. Perhaps you want that flexibility to make the currency more valuable for you. That's a key benefit. We will provide lounge access. It won't be unlimited. We're going to do it in a metered way, again, to manage the crowding. That will be a big piece of it. There will be a Global Award Companion Certificate. This is something we shared at Investor Day. The card we have today offers a companion certificate. It's a revenue certificate, $99 plus taxes and fees. The premium card will offer a mileage-based certificate. So you're bringing your spouse or friend with you, and you redeem for miles, they'll come with you for free, complimentary included. And so that's a pretty exciting feature. We went out and spoke to consumers. They actually valued that more than they did the lounge access, because a lot of premium cardholders, they already have a way to get into the lounge, and they wanted something different. There's kind of a long list of other features we'll offer, as tends to be the case with premium cards, but those are the ones that I'm personally most excited about.
Yeah, I also want to touch a little bit on the Hawaiian merger. I'm curious as to how the Hawaiian merger is going to help Alaska with these premium and loyalty goals beyond just the network and the massive fleet that you guys now have.
We've spent probably the past 30 months, obviously doing our diligence on Hawaiian, announcing the acquisition, closing the acquisition, and now we're about 4 months post-close. What I'll tell you is kind of the management team at Alaska, we've never been more excited. What we've found in each day that we learned more about the Hawaiian business, we've become, I think, more, the opportunities become clearer. What we can do together has become more apparent. And so whether it's long haul flying from Seattle, the dual brand structure and kind of the amazing history that Hawaiian has in the state of Hawaii market, keeping that distinct, there's just a huge unlock that conveys to the business. And so we couldn't be more excited about the combination. Our employees are engaged. We have over 30,000 employees now. Our customers are super excited. The ability to fly long haul, of course, but then also better access to the Hawaiian Islands, both for legacy Alaska guests, but also for Hawaiian guests. There were many places that Hawaiian couldn't take their consumers, and folks in the Hawaiian Islands, residents of Hawaii, they ultimately want to fly on the local flag carrier, but Hawaiian couldn't get them there. You think about a market like DC or Atlanta or Miami, and Hawaiian wasn't able to service that need, and so they flew with a competitor. And ultimately now, Alaska, Hawaiian, what we offer together, we can satisfy that. Similarly, for an Alaska guest, we can take them to Sydney or Auckland or French Polynesia or Tokyo or Seoul. And so it's a really natural combination, and there's a ton that we're going to be able to do together.
Yeah, sort of going off of that point and keeping the Hawaiian brand intact, something that we've seen a lot in the past 20 years or so with airline mergers is when they combine, the brand that they combine with tends to dissolve over time. How does Alaska plan to keep the Hawaiian intact as a separate brand from Alaska Airlines in the years to come?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, Alaska, we've done the past 2 airline mergers in the U.S. We acquired Virgin America in 2016, 2017. I would say, by and large, it's the same management team. And we learned a lot from that acquisition. As soon as we started looking at Hawaiian, doing our due diligence, one thing that was immediately clear is this did not work without the Hawaiian brand. What they built in Hawaii as a destination leisure carrier, they've been around for 90 plus years, that's powerful. And you simply can't replace it. And so for us, it was how do we do it? How do we keep Hawaiian and Alaska in both brands intact in a way that ultimately still allows us to unlock synergies, to be clear with guests around the services and products that they're getting. And we have a playbook to do that. And we're really excited about the unlock of building a platform with 2 brands because it ultimately can scale. No one knows what the future holds, but it gives us that type of optionality that in this business is really valuable.
Yeah, and it's interesting having this umbrella brand for Alaska and Hawaiian, which is sort of unique in the U.S. For airlines. I'm curious, is there any concern about any potential customer confusion now that there's like this one big brand that houses these two other brands?
Yeah, it's certainly top of mind, something that we think is manageable. There's all the touch points we have now, whether it's the desktop experience, the app experience on board. Ultimately, Hawaiian is a destination carrier. And so it's pretty easy for us to ring fence. If you're flying to Hawaii, it's gonna be Hawaiian branded. And that'll take us a couple years to get there, but we think that proposition will resonate and avoid some of the customer confusion that could exist if you had brands that were trying to compete in similar markets or geographies.
And there are a couple more audience questions that I want to touch on. One of them is, can you talk about Hawaiian's strategy, for example? Are all California to Hawaii flights going to be on Hawaiian Air, and when does that start?
Yeah, it's something that we shared at Investor Day is our intent. If you're flying to Hawaii, and this will take time, you'll be on a Hawaiian branded plane. What we saw, and we saw this in diligence, we've seen it now that we've closed, is Hawaiian has incredible brand resonance, and ultimately they're able to command a premium in the market because people want their vacation, that experience to begin the moment they get on board. Whether you're going to Hawaii for leisure, or maybe you're a Hawaii resident, and it feels like home to you. And so every flight to Hawaii, and this will take us time again, will ultimately be branded Hawaiian. And that allows us to really lean into where they've been successful, where they can command a premium in the market, and ultimately what allows us to unlock the most value for our shareholders.
Yeah, and then one other one, and I also want to call on one of the slides with the 787 configuration that Alaska is potentially touting. So this audience question is asking, with long-haul flights like Seoul, are you going to be doing that with flatbed configurations in first class and business class?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to launch Tokyo next May. That'll be on an A330. There's 18 lie flat seats on that aircraft. Next fall, 787s, which Hawaiian has in the fleet today, they're the perfect aircraft for both Tokyo and Seoul. They have a brand new, beautiful lie flat, suite-based product. And so we're really excited to get that type of configuration into a long-haul market out of Seattle, where it is a mix of business, leisure, VFR, and there's a certain expectation around product quality. So absolutely, we'll have lie flat, long-haul out of Seattle.
Another thing that's interesting about Hawaiian is that they were one of the few U.S. airlines to have Starlink for their Wi-Fi, and that seems to be something that's becoming a lot more popular. Is Alaska going to adopt Starlink fleet-wide post-merger now?
Yeah, nothing to announce today, but what I'll say is post-close, what we've seen from guests is they love Starlink. The product is fantastic, the latency is excellent, the experience, of course, it's a free product, is really, really positive. So it's something that we're looking at very seriously, and certainly the industry is moving that direction. You've seen other announcements from our competitors, but we're really, I think, pleased with what Hawaiian's done, and they have Starlink now. We have Starlink on the Hawaiian aircraft, all the 321s, all the 330s, and it was done really quickly, which is something, having done a lot of retrofits on our fleet historically with traditional satellite-based technology, it takes a lot of time, and so the speed at which we were able to get Starlink onto the Hawaiian aircraft is a key selling point.
So we can, I guess, expect the Starlink satellite-based Wi-Fi to stay intact on like the current Hawaiian fleet then?
I think for now, I'd say we're really satisfied with the product.
Yeah, I guess we're also getting another audience question this time on mileage plan. It's asking, regarding customers preferring a revenue-based program, how much of that opinion is formed by point maximizers versus high revenue flyers who would benefit the most from it?
Yeah, it's an astute question, and I kind of referenced earlier how we had done the research, and more than half of people now are saying they prefer revenue-based because they get it. That was surprising to us, to be honest, and so we went back and cut the data by pretty much every cohort we could. We said, well, what about elite flyers? What about younger flyers versus elderly flyers? What about a geographic cut? And it tends to be more universal. It is more pronounced though with younger flyers because I think it's what they're used to. 10, 15 years ago, if you were traveling, you perhaps had experience with distance-based. If you're in your 20s today, that's not something that you've really ever experienced outside of flying on Alaska or Hawaiian. And so it's something where, again, I don't think we're going to go all the way down the path of revenue-based. It's not in our DNA. And there's still guests for sure who love distance-based because they're able to take advantage of it in certain ways. But there's also a lot of guests now that are disadvantaged by being distance-based. That's particularly true for long-haul flights, where you might be spending a couple of $1,000s in economy, maybe orders of magnitude more in business class, and the revenue-based structures are really rewarding for those type of travelers. And so it's finding the right balance, finding a proposition that can serve all those constituent needs, and that's what we're giving a lot of thought to now.
Yeah. So I got one last question. what was interesting about Alaska's Investor Day was that it's clearly ambitious following this merger with Hawaiian. And in an interview that CEO Ben Minicucci did, I think, ahead of Investor Day with the air show, he kind of made it seem as if he wants Alaska to be in that club with American, Delta, United, and Southwest, now that it has the fleet and the network and everything. How are these loyalty and premium initiatives going to help Alaska accomplish that goal, which some might say is lofty given the state of the industry?
Yeah, I think ultimately you look at Air Group's performance over the past 20 years. We're very much in that club. Like, we've delivered for our shareholders and our guests over many, many years. This is a natural extension of that. We outlined a plan to add an incremental $1 billion of profit, but doing it in a way that invests in the loyalty experience and the premium experience, grows our network, which is great for our employees, great for our customers, and we're really excited to now go execute on Alaska Accelerate.
It's a really interesting time to be Alaska right now. I'm also curious, besides those Seoul and Tokyo routes that are launching later this year, can you tell us anywhere next that Alaska is eyeing with these wide-body aircrafts that it has?
Yeah, we have 12 787s on order. Those aircraft can serve a lot of missions from Seattle, from other markets, and I'll let the audience continue to kind of guess where we'll be going next, but for now we're focused on Tokyo and Seoul next summer.
Yeah, well, I think that is all the time that we have.
Thanks so much, Meghna.
Thank you so much.